is up, everybody? Welcome to Dharma Time here on WPSN99.com. I am your host, the Dharma Guy. As always, I am joined with, bring him up, the Dope Doctor. What's up, man?
What's happening, brother? How you doing?
I'm doing well, my friend. Doing well.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
it's been a good day so far.
It's been a lucrative day. It's been a
Yeah, it's been a good
so.
day for Foundation.
Well, let's just go ahead and address that. Why don't we?
Well, yeah, because I got this thing on my head.
I
So
know.
before
Yes.
we start
So
commenting,
as of right now, and I promise everybody, I know everybody's chomping at the bits to hear the topic today, and I
yeah,
promise we're going to get to it. However, it is important to kind of discuss briefly what we do and why we do it. It is currently live. If you're watching this on our Facebook stream, it is live at 6 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. We normally go on at 1. However, we had an appointment today at 1:30 because, as many of you might know, I am the president, and he is the founder of the Now Matters More Foundation, and we help individuals struggling with the disease of addiction. We go out and vet different treatment facilities and make sure they're on the up and up, as well as at times we'll scholarship treatment or help kind of reduce some of the barriers to get into treatment. And then, what we're doing right now is we kind of break down the stigma and do some advocacy work. And in order to do so, we need funds. And many people will go to nowmattersmore.org and they will donate there. Sometimes people have gone to smile.amazon and added us there. However, Sports Subaru South is a big contributor. They've supported us year in and year out. And over, what was it, last year and into the new year, they had an event called Share the Love. Many of you who've been watching the show for quite some time, either live or on YouTube, have probably heard us talking about it. And so it ended in January, and we went, and today was the day that they gave us the check, and it is,
yeah,
let me see,
yeah. Show that check,
it's right
man.
behind me. It was almost $22,000, man.
That's the one you can't cash. I got the one you can
Yeah,
cash.
there you go. So thank you again, Subaru,
So
for being such a stellar supporter of us and what we do.
$21,848.29.
Yeah, man, we'll be able to do a lot of good work with that. And so if you or anybody you know is struggling with the disease of addiction, please pick up the phone and call 833 Now Matters. That's 833 Now Matters. Or you can
Yeah,
go to nowmattersmore.org and kind of see what we're about. You can fill out an application for help there, or you can hit the little donate button and contribute to that $21,000. So that is why the show is running a little bit late today. However, if you're watching this on YouTube or something, then you're watching it on your own time. Make sure you hit the little subscribe button. And while I'm at it, go ahead and tell you guys you can follow us on social media. I am at the Dharma Guy. He is at the Dope Doctor. We are at WPSN99 or at Now Matters More. You can feel free to subscribe. Check out youtube.com/Dharma Time. And while you're at it, go ahead and check out youtube.com/The Couch Live. So,
yep.
all right, let's go ahead and let's dive in, man.
Big topic.
So on Friday we did the Couch Live,
Yeah,
and instead of talking about addiction, we decided to cover the George Floyd situation and all that encompassed, I guess, at that time.
yeah.
We thought that we covered what we needed to cover. We kind of gave some insight on it, gave our perspectives, and did the best we could. And
Right.
then later on that evening, all hell broke loose. So from
It got
Friday,
crazy.
I'm sorry?
Said it got crazy.
Yeah, man. So from Friday night until now, essentially, protesting kind of in certain areas turned into rioting, and just kind of got really out of hand in a lot of different places, man. A lot of damage. A lot of business owners are dealing with destroyed property and things of that nature. A plethora of videos of showing police with tons of restraint, and also plenty of videos showing cops with no restraint going overboard. Like there was just one would call it lawlessness, maybe. It was intense, man. And it wasn't just, I've never seen anything like it in my life. I
Mm.
remember the riots. I wasn't quite old enough to really remember too much of the Watts, but I do remember the Baltimore and other areas. But those were usually located in one pocket, if you will. Whereas this one was like pretty much every city that I can think of, it was happening. And so that prompted you and I to decide to do another show on things and kind of to cover it, give some insight and give some thoughts.
Yeah.
And in preparation for the show, I tried to get out to a couple of the the law enforcement people that we know, and we're blessed to know a lot of really good ones. And obviously at the moment they're not able to come on the record right now because it's just too intense, really. But we did speak to quite a few of them. I know I did. And off the record, I was able to ask them some questions and get their insight and get their thoughts. And that way I can bring more knowledge to today's show
Right.
and kind of.
I actually haven't yet.
I'm sorry?
I actually haven't yet. I haven't called them yet.
Yeah, I did.
They're a little bit busy.
To be honest with you, it started out on my end. It started out, I have a really good friend of mine who I've known for over 20 years. Very well respected officer. That's the one I was telling you about that kind of does some off duty things at Publix. And so I sent him a text message. And I was like, "Look, man, I don't know where they've got you or what you're doing, but just be safe out there, bro."
Right.
And he kind of enlightened me on some things that are happening that just kind of boggles my mind right now of what's going on. But thankfully, he's safe. The other one I talked to is safe as well. They're all doing well.
Good.
Good. They're doing things though, like they're not parking their squad cars at their house at night because they're afraid if it gets firebombed or something in the middle of the night, they don't want it to take down the neighborhood. It's a shame that those kinds of things are happening right now, but it's understandable. There's a lot of anger right now. There's a lot of emotion going back and forth, and it's a very complicated time. And you and I were even talking a little bit prior to air, and we had some thoughts and some ideas that we might put into future shows once we can figure out the least offensive way to put them and kind of have a real dialogue.
The timeliness.
Exactly.
You don't want to take away from a certain moment in time,
Correct.
right? Like when there's a good message in a certain moment in time, you don't want to take away from that message.
Exactly.
Because everybody's so emotionally charged with this.
Yes.
I mean, all sides. And I like that we're calling it, what we're calling it. Because I feel like everyone agrees too, except everybody's so used to disagreeing with each other right now that they're even picking fights. I'm watching people pick fights and argue even when they really are agreeing.
Well, and that's why we decided to call it that, right? Because once we had our pre-show kind of meeting, if you will, we came to the conclusion that the show that needed to happen right now anyways, is we all agree.
Yes.
And what I mean by that is I've spoken to a lot of people over the last several days to a week. I know you have as well, and I've seen numerous postings on social media and things of that nature. And he just called you Perry, by the way.
No, he didn't. He's calling Perry. Perry
okay, I thought he was talking about you. That's funny. But anyways, so man, that is the thing that I think we have to not lose sight on right now. Right? Is at the end of the day, everybody I've spoken to and I've seen, we all essentially agree, dude. I don't know of anybody that is saying that the killing of George Floyd was not a heinous crime and murderous, and he needs to be brought to justice.
So let's start with that.
Sure.
Let's start with that. I mean, really, and if anybody watching this right now, has anyone really heard or called it anything other than a killing or a murder?
I don't think so. Not that I've seen. I don't know of anybody that is defending it either.
I had said on Friday's show, I heard it on Friday, and that's why we were talking on Friday, man, because I'm the perfect independent, right? I flip CNN, Fox News, CNN, Fox News, CNN, Fox News. I'm a Libra and a registered independent. Everything I do is like a little bit of both, right? And I was like, damn, Trinity, for the first time in a long time, I'm flipping channels, and they were both in agreement. For a split second, by the way.
It didn't last long.
It didn't last long.
They did not last long.
Because those two channels know how to then, turn it into a political campaign.
Yes.
But for that day, for Friday, they were both in agreement.
Yeah.
Because they were still focused on the point. And the point is that's a murder.
Yeah.
That right there is a murder. There's no way you can defend it. You shouldn't defend it. And if you're defending it, I'd love to hear that argument.
Yeah, I'd like to hear if anybody could put together an intelligent argument on why that wasn't, anything other than murder.
Right.
And so, and I agree with you in the sense that, pretty much everybody agrees on that. It's a universal across the board. Everybody seems to agree that was a heinous crime and the person needs to be brought to justice.
Right. So when you start with that, when you start with something that for the first time ever, look, as a Latino, I would think that, if all of a sudden I would flip on the TV and see that everyone agrees that, something that means so much to me personally, and everybody's agreeing and says, you know what, Louis, you're right today. Today you're right. I'm not even going to argue with you, bro. You got it. You got a point, 100%. You would think you'd be able to be, what?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Let's take this moment then, and let's shout out to the world in unison, all together, and like all be rejoiceful that we're at a place and time in our lifetime, in our world, where we can watch something like that and not politicize it, and we can all say, yes, thank you for agreeing with me. Thank you for understanding that is problematic. But it didn't stay there, Trinity, and then
it did not last
the whole
long.
world blew up.
Yeah, I think, and then so that's one point that we kind of all universally agreed upon, and then the protesting started, which I think overall, for the most part, most people agree with the idea of protesting. I think where the divide starts to happen is when people disagree on the where and the when and the how, things of that nature. But then I think another one that brought a lot of people together, and that is when it turned into rioting. It seems like a lot of people, hopefully, I think, are in agreement that the rioting is a bit too far. Like rioting is not helpful to the cause. That it is muddying the principle of what we're all doing and why we're doing it and what we agree and disagree with. So I think that's when we say we agree. I think the two things that we can hopefully all agree on is putting your knee on a man's neck while he's subdued and on the ground is murder. Like when you do it for 8 minutes and the guy dies, that's murder and that's wrong. And destroying private businesses and looting and setting things on fire and throwing urine on cops and shooting, I disagree with that too.
Yeah, that's wrong too. And I don't think anybody disagrees with that either. Well, except that urine on cops, there might be some people that disagree with that, which that sucks.
Yeah,
sucks for you where you're at in your life. And I'm glad I'm not there. But hey, what's up, Leo? But destroying monuments or destroying things that are part of the fabric of who we are, the nation.
Well, Marissa just commented. She says, "I've had conversations justifying the riots and burning as my major city dies along with George." I don't know how anybody would. I've heard people justifying the emotion and the raw anger and the frustration, but I haven't heard anybody legitimately justifying the act of burning down things and destroying things. Because at the end of the day, I've seen so many stories where a lot of them were like black-owned businesses that are being destroyed, and they're already struggling because of COVID, and now they've got this. And so a lot of them, sadly, are probably going to go bankrupt because of this and no longer exist, and it's unfortunate. And
to be honest with you, regardless of who owns it, you're destroying. You that's not how points are made. By destroying the same businesses that your family may need. The supermarkets that your family uses, the pharmacies that your family uses, the neighborhood restaurants that your family uses, to destroy things that are going to end up costing you money as a community anyway, because it's going to get rebuilt somehow. Something's going to get built there, but it's definitely going to cost you insurance money, and insurance companies are going to rise all of our rates up. All of our rates go up with insurance because all of us have insurance, and then property taxes and everything else. The money is going to have to come from somewhere, and trust me, they're not going to just print more money.
No.
It's going to come out of all of us.
Yeah, it's going to come in the form of raised rates. It's going to come in the form of taxes. It's.
And this coming on the backside of where the government just gave everybody some money. Well, a lot of them individuals that were rioting and problematic, they just got a check. So it's like it's a difficult time.
Right.
It's a difficult time. So this just came at a really bad time. Well, 2 weeks ago, people were protesting to not have to stay in their homes. Right? They were protesting saying, I don't want to stay home anymore. Open this up. And they were protesting that. Yeah. Now they're protesting a different thing. So it's like we've gone from protest to protest.
Well, and historically, violent riots don't work. They just don't. Most of our real change has come from peaceful protesting. Only and anecdotally, right? If there's any parents on here, which I'm sure there are, I know I'm a parent and you're a parent. Think of it this way: what's the best way for your child to convince you to say yes on something that you want to say no to? Is it them coming to you with solid, reasonable points and explaining and justifying their stance and making sense, or is it them throwing a temper tantrum and storming off the room, slamming doors?
If they go slam the doors and punch the walls and start breaking stuff in the house, I guarantee you I'm not going to say yes.
Exactly. It's just not going to happen because now it's no longer. I'm no longer even in the mindset of understanding what's happening. Now I'm in the mindset of what the hell is going through your mind. Why are you doing this? Like we need to put this to a stop. And so I think that's where the riots are falling short. And then the other thing I think it needs to be said, and I real briefly, Leo kind of pointed this out in his own way. It says the people arrested in Missouri weren't from the areas they were destroying. I think it is. We do have to point out that I've seen. Now I'm not going to claim it's everybody because that's just ridiculous. But I will say that I've seen numerous videos and numerous instances where some of the people, or a lot of the people who are in these areas destroying stuff, a lot of them aren't from that particular area. They kind of came in as an opportunist. And B, and there's an overwhelming amount of young white teenagers destroying things. And I think that's ridiculous. I think that's it's not helping any cause. And the sad part is, I'd be willing to bet that a lot of them really don't want to help a cause. I think a lot of them just saw an opportunity to destroy some things and be. And I think you said it earlier about being relevant.
Right.
And I think a lot of them just saw this as opportunity to create relevance when there maybe wasn't any.
Right.
And it's sad.
So I think we have to also then go back, Trinity, to stuff that many of us agree upon. Now, this one, not everybody does agree. There's a systematic problem. There's a systematic racism in place. I know that could be controversial, but let's break it down for a second, because you made a great analogy earlier when we were doing show prep when I brought up that these things are changing. It's not like the world isn't changing for the better,
Right.
but it just doesn't change as quick as any one individual or any one family changes.
Yeah.
Like in a family, it can just change from parent to child, and boom, it can be completely opposite and completely different. We saw that from the 50s parents having a little hippie kid in the 60s and 70s thought very differently than that father, and then that hippie kid, then having an 80s kid like me, then that was a very different generation. Then the 80s, and on and on and on. We see the changes in one generation, but system changes take a lot longer.
Yes.
I mean, they don't just happen overnight. And if you can go ahead, use the analogy that you mentioned, because I think it was a good analogy so that people can get a visual on what
Yeah, it was just to have something to compare it to, I guess. Like if you're on the water and you're like on a jet ski, you need to make a U-turn. It's a very quick, very instantaneous thing. You just turn it and you go. To whereas with a system, it's more of like an ocean liner or a freighter. Those big, huge tankers that have tons and tons of cargo. To get that to turn, man, you got to start way ahead of time and start the process of turning it. It's not going to be a 30-second deal.
Right.
To take, or even like a cruise ship or something. Like if you've ever been on a cruise ship, it takes forever for it to get out into the ocean because it's so massive. It takes so much to kind of turn around. And I think that's how our systems are, because there's so many moving parts. There's so many instances of red tape and so much bureaucracy and so much other things that are dependent upon that you have to address. Like, oddly enough, it sounds ridiculous, I guess, but you and I have recently started playing the free game on PlayStation it's called Cities, where you have to build a city. And in that, if that doesn't give you a better appreciation for how complicated things are, then I don't know what will.
And get it. And we don't even have to deal with the people fighting each other.
No, we don't have to deal with any of that.
It's just their money.
Yeah.
But let's address Ellsworth's comment, because I think that's important. All right. So how many people need to be murdered while we were waiting? And that's a really good question. So if I can speak to that, Ellsworth, I think that unfortunately, there's a lot of individuals, there's a lot of moving parts in these systems, and I think that I would like to believe that if that particular system in that particular city, after that incident, would have responded what we would feel is correctly immediately, then we wouldn't be seeing what we're seeing. Now, I don't know that to be true. For all we know, the whole world could have still been on fire, even if they would have responded correctly. I don't know. However, I would like to believe that we're in a place in our society right now that if immediately after that event, that the mayor that is in that city this police chief that is in that city, the council people that are in that city, if they would have immediately come out and said, whoa, whoa, this is how we're going to respond to this. We are going to arrest these 4 individuals because what we saw, we cannot see any law-abiding work being done. At that moment, we see pure lawlessness on their part, and therefore we are going to arrest these 4. We're going to investigate a little bit further with charges pending, much like they would do, Trinity, if you and I would have done it. If you and I would have sat on the neck of any individual, more you because you're a heavier guy than me, if you would have sat on the neck of any individual in Minneapolis, I don't think, Trinity, they would have let you go home, and they would have thought about it before they would have arrested you. So
Correct.
I think that, Ellsworth, to speak to what you're saying, it's not how many of us need to be murdered. It's how many deaths of all people at the hands of people that are in power and control. Because let's not mince words. We do know that there's police brutality claims to women have been generational. Police brutality claims to all types of people, not just black people, have been generational. And that good old boy network of law enforcement officers has been getting broken down into more of a cooperative for a long time. Now, in my industry, in our industry of addiction treatment, they've made tremendous strides and tremendous leaps and changes. So we do see systems change in certain parts. Now, I think the same way, Trinity, you and I have now seen the way police officers react or respond to someone dying of a heroin overdose and giving them Narcan and wanting to carry Narcan, is I think the same kind of changes we now need to see in this respect. Whereas if you felt that person disrespected you, if you felt that person is not listening to your command or your order, then there's, and that leads you to the point of harming somebody physically or doing something against their personal rights, then you need to be held accountable immediately. Immediately. And that's what hasn't changed.
And you know what? I want to comment on that briefly. I don't want to. We're not going to get too deep into the woods on some of this yet, but I do want to comment on some of that and state that I do think that the tides are turning. Is it as quickly as we would all like for it to turn? No, absolutely not. But I do think the tides are turning. I think that, number one, as they get more devices for transparency, like body cams and stuff like that protects both of us. I think the education that they're getting, the training that they're getting. One of the officers that I spoke to is a relatively high up individual. They do a lot of the trainings themselves. They teach at the academies and whatnot. And they said that the number one thing that they think would help this is education. And they said essentially that right now there has seemed to be, at least in the agencies that this person's familiar with, there seems to be a push for education on safety, protocol, and what not to say.
Right.
There wasn't so much of a push on the education to learn how to talk to people, right? Like de-escalation and emotional IQ, I think they would call that.
Yeah, EQ.
But this person is going into a training, and like a couple of days ago, actually, they went to one, and they said it opened their eyes. Like they learned how to spot mental illness and how to deal with them. That they're now going to bring back to that agency and start the process. And so these are things that 10, 15, 20 years ago, it just never would have been uttered from an officer's mouth. Like the idea of understanding that mental health is out there and that I need to change my approach. Why? Like they never would have said that. And so, and you and I know so many officers that feel that way. And a lot of them are in very high positions and they have the ability to make changes, and they are. Now, as you pointed out, if it's a system, a system is made up of many, many individuals. And a lot of those individuals are changing, but not all of them are. And so I think that's, that's what we have to keep in mind. That, perfect example, this gentleman, I don't want to call him a gentleman, this murderer, essentially, he is arrested at the moment, and they are talking about bringing charges against the other 3. And every cop that I've spoken to who's seen that, they're outraged. Every cop that I've spoken to, matter of fact, one of the cops I was on the phone with yesterday told me that he's more upset with the 3 people that stood around watching than he was with the person who actually did it. Because he said that was just completely unacceptable. You see something, you stop them, and they didn't. And so, and there's more of those people, and they're getting more of a voice. Yeah. And I think that the more we as a society show them that that's what we're looking for, I think that they're going to continue to go that way. But the way we do that isn't by burning our cities down.
Right. Well, the shame is that in order to change systems, you have to get within the system. You don't fight it
Yes.
from outside. You got to fight it from the inside. You become part of the system. And I don't want any young people out there discouraged from becoming law enforcement and being part of that good change that we need because of the way we treat law enforcement. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
we need to we do need someone protecting my mom and my dad from just anyone who wants their stuff, right? I mean, I think
Yeah.
we can all agree that there has to be a sense of order and structure. We've seen that when and even in a prison system, because of the immense order and structure, the people that could take over the prison don't take over the prison. I mean, at any point in time, if those prisoners wanted to take over the prison, they can do that. They at any moment in time, and they know it.
There's enough of them, yeah.
But they don't, because a lot of the structure and the way the system is kind of set up in there, if they're fine with it and you play ball with them, they'll play ball with you. And that is the worst of our society, right? So if you can do it in a prison system, there's no way we shouldn't be able to do it out here in a free system where we actually have more bodies and more ability to provide more benefits, more freedoms, more incentives to do the right thing. But you have to hold those in power and control accountable.
Yes.
And like Ellsworth said earlier, if there truly were, and I haven't seen that there were 18 charges against him or 18 complaints against him, but that's what's being thrown out in the media.
Well, I've
right?
seen that, but they haven't specified what those complaints are and how valid they are.
Yeah, I don't know what they are, but let's say they're true. Let's just say, for argument's sake, there's 18 complaints against an officer. Well, that's a lot. That's just
that is a lot.
That's just ridiculous. And so I happen to have seen in many different areas, there'd be like multiple complaints of sexual misconduct, by certain individuals in power and control, and nothing happens. And it's not. Let's not pretend that it's different than that, because any life that is affected by somebody in a power and control situation where we don't do the adequate response does not allow the individuals that are from that segment of society to feel comfortable, does not allow those individuals to feel safe, and doesn't breed trust from those individuals. So you definitely can't do it to an entire culture of people. We shouldn't do it to women, and we shouldn't do it to anybody from a minority group. And I'm saying those two groups because right now, Trinity, those are the two groups that have kind of had their civil rights at the same time, have kind of had their growth at the same time, right? Those two groups have kind of have been, together in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and today. And both groups are still fighting it. Both groups are still asking for a sense of equality.
Agreed. And I think that it is coming. I really do believe that. And maybe I'm just the eternal optimist here, but the more like officers and stuff that I speak to, for instance, the more I hear the sentiment, right? And what I mean by that is the locker room talk, right? There's the public face that a lot of the officers give you,
Right.
and then there's behind closed doors what they really feel, for instance, and. My mother being an LEO and inside the prison system for 20 some years, she's been privy to many conversations where she got to hear the real talk from the cops and what they said behind closed doors. And it was very much, screw them all. They're all stupid criminals, whatever.
Right.
And that was the case, however long ago it was. And many people feel that it still is the case. And I specifically asked yesterday, I was on the phone and I asked, I was like, look, man, so... is that, has that changed at all? Are they still, and he felt very confident that no, like it's not the same anymore.
Right.
That those people are starting to be weeded out, and it's just no longer, like I even asked him, I was like, everybody knows who that is, right? Like everybody knows that guy's just whatever. How is that person allowed to survive? And he said that they're not anymore. He said they're starting to be weeded out because the ability to look the other way and to cover things up is becoming harder and harder and harder to do because you have things like body cameras. You have things like us walking around with iPhone cameras. You have things like protests and stuff like that. Like, and it's a combination of things are changing, and it's also a combination of CYA, right? So a lot of the people who are higher up in positions don't want to be seen as somebody covering things up. So they're starting to realize, like, look, man, I can't cover for you because I'm trying to move up, and I'm not going to be seen for doing it. Like, it is happening. Is it done? No. Is there still an absurdly long way to go? Yes. But are we moving in that direction? Is the freighter starting to make the turn? And I think it is. And for that, I'm
Well,
thankful.
yeah. Well, I know at least one sheriff of a small southern
Sure.
redneck town, if that's the way you want to call it.
Yep.
And he will flat out call anybody that even does a little bit of crime a scumbag,
Yep.
and he's really adamant and very loud about it.
Yeah. No, they're out
But
there.
he was also a same sheriff that when these protests happened, he walked and he marched with protesters in unison with them because he thought that same individual, that cop that killed George Floyd, was also a scumbag.
Right.
So at least he stayed true to how he feels. He feels that if you defy the law, you're a scumbag. So he talks like that. But the only reason I want to say that is because sometimes you can't read the room. Like when I saw that, when I read that, I was like, I wouldn't have thought that. I would have initially judged him to be very different in that moment,
Right.
and instead he marched with the protesters. So just be mindful of that.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, the talking to some of the officers I did yesterday just for the show because I legitimately wanted like some inside stuff, man. They talked to me, what's going on,
Right.
and they all agreed, man, that universally that was a bad, it was a bad move.
Yeah.
But they feel also conflicted right now, like because they're people too, man, and I think sometimes we forget that, right? Like all we see is the badge, or we think of all the instances where we felt wronged or prosecuted or whatever or harmed in some way by somebody with a badge. And it's easy for
Right.
us to get so caught up in what we see to be injustices to ourselves and to around the world that we forget that these are human beings, man. These are people. And yes, some of them are flawed, just like we are. But some of them are actually really good. And I know quite a few of them that are fantastic. And it breaks my heart to know that, like, there's a friend of mine who I've known for 20 years, man. Great human being that is texting me telling me that people are throwing balloons filled with urine at them. Like, it's like, dude, that's not going to help anybody, man. And that's what bothers me is like, and another one of my friends who's also been on the force for over 20 years, like they can't park their car in their house right now. Like, because they're afraid that if they park it too close to their house, somebody could firebomb it and it's going to catch their house on fire with their wife and kids inside.
Yeah, you know what I was thinking of how many of those individuals, have some stickers on their car that kind of identify that they're law enforcement or something like that. I was thinking about that earlier today when we were driving to go do that event. How many of them, they want to be proud of their job. They want to be proud of how they contribute to our society, right, and to our community. And then right now, I mean, their wives and their husbands are probably real afraid, and their kids are probably real afraid right now. And that's sad, man. And that is sad because I don't want to take away from the George Floyd story,
No, not at all.
right? And I don't want to take away from the movement that needs to continue moving, but it needs to move a lot faster.
Yes.
Because unfortunately we're in a society that if you start providing any empathy in one direction, it's like the whole other side wants. Where's our empathy?
Yes.
You should empathize with us.
Yeah.
And I think what we're saying, Trinity, is that actually I think we both agree that empathy should be on both sides. Yeah. We don't ever want to shame the good in us. And so if we're going to protect shaming any type of people or condemning any kind of people, then and we want to say, hey, don't paint us with such a broad stroke, man. Just because I'm a Latino doesn't mean I'm a gangbanger, bro. Right. Just because there's 4 Latino, and just because I'm wearing this headband today doesn't mean I'm a Crip. If I want that respect, well, then I have to give it like that too. And I'm not one of these people that believe you have to give respect to get respect. You have to give it to receive to give it back. Right. You know what I mean? You receive it to give it. I think you should just give it because that's the right thing to do. Right. You just give it because that's what your mom and dad told you to do. And if you don't mind your mom and dad, then you're not going to mind me. If you're going to disrespect your parents, bro, you're definitely going to disrespect me.
Yeah.
And so we have to take responsibility as parents. And if you're a parent out there and you haven't sat your kids down and had a full conversation about like how they're feeling about this whole thing, at least hear them out. I heard Zoe and Dali today about how they're feeling about this thing. Right. It's not all exactly how I feel, but I like hearing it because they're a complete different generation. Sure. They hear and see maybe some of the things that I see, but they see it from their perspective, and that's okay. But at least you can have the conversation about it. You know what I mean? And that's important. Because if your kid is walking out of your house saying "f this, f that," they deserve what they get, and you let them walk out of that house, you might lose your kid that day.
Right.
You got to be careful that your kid's going to go out there and create some chaos and disorder that they might not be able to come home from.
Yeah, and Ellsworth just made a comment that I do want to address. He says it sucks they feel that way during this time. So imagine how it would be to feel that way every day of your entire life.
Amen.
And I agree with that. And this is where I'm going to have to be Dharma Guy for a second.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by that is, okay, I'll phrase it this way. Growing up, I had a really shitty dad. He was physically abusive to myself, my mom, the whole house. And then we kind of parted ways at 5 years old, and I haven't seen him since, right? But I know what it was growing up to not have a dad and to only have those images of a dad.
Right.
And so what I said was, instead of being angry and violent towards my kids or whatever, when I had kids, I know how much that sucks, and I don't want my kids to feel that because I know how much it sucks. So I'm going to make sure I do different. And so Ellsworth, what I would say is, if you do know how bad that is, why would you ever want to make somebody else feel that? You can't let your anger and your rage supersede your goodness as a human being. I think it was Gandhi that said, "Be the change that you want to see." From a spiritual perspective, I'm still a dude. I can get angry and I can get mad at a lot of different things, man. But one of the things I'm grateful that I've learned in my life is compassion. And that's not compassion just for the people I agree with. And it's not compassion just for myself, but that's compassion for everybody. Even those who have yet to learn. And I try to love them where they're at on their journey. And I try to change them with love and compassion as opposed to anger and violence. Because anger and violence typically doesn't solve things. It typically makes it worse. And so while I agree that it's got to suck to live that way every day, that's the exact reason why I don't want anybody feeling that.
Yeah.
I don't want black folks feeling that. I don't want cops feeling that. I don't want women feeling that. I don't want my children feeling that. I don't want my neighbor feeling that. I don't want anybody feeling that.
Right. And the key right there, Trinity, is that we need those leaders from all those individual cultures that feel that way to be a little bit more vocal in a way that shows how that can be accomplished. Right. I think sparring back and forth is not gonna get that accomplished, but there's some people that are very good at how to speak, and they're very good at how to explain a situation, but it's probably going to come from somebody who doesn't have another agenda, because when certain leaders tend to use these moments in time to promote their agenda, then that also causes more problem.
Absolutely.
So I'd like to see more leaders from those communities speak in a way that can show true things that can truly change. More like this, more like, allow me to come into your police department and offer those trainings. I would like to extend an invitation to your police department to come visit our church or our organization, our community, and come come to one of our gatherings and maybe shake some hands and get to know the people of the community that you're serving. I mean, I would like to see leadership talk more like that and offer solutions. We know what the problem is. This is the problem-solving network. What we want to do is talk about solutions. We know the problem. The problem has been here a lot longer than us, man. But here's what we do know. Of course, it's on an upswing. If it wasn't on an upswing, we'd see a hell of a lot more murders on that television today than we do see. But one is too many, right? One is too many. And so I think I would like to see more leadership. And I don't like that people are kind of, I don't want to make this a political thing, but people look all the way to the top as if the top does anything. This is not a Biden-Trump thing. This is not a Biden-Trump thing. No. This is a local commissioner kind of thing. This is a local mayor kind of thing. A local sheriff kind of thing.
Well, a perfect example was the sheriff that is making the rounds right now from Michigan. I remember when, of course the video's all over the place now, but I remember when it first happened. It was a sheriff from Michigan, big in that community, and he said in his own words, essentially, that when they were out there, they were ready for riots and ready for protesting. And he looked around and he saw his officers that are big in that community seeing the people that they knew, give them hugs and say, hey, what's going on? Like, all right, we're here. We're all getting ready to start. And he says at that moment, he realized that he didn't want this to be a combative type thing. And so he put the stuff down and marched with them.
Right.
And it was a terrific march. It was a terrific thing. And that wasn't Trump. That wasn't Biden. That was two
Hmm.
local people. That was a
Right.
local sheriff that knew his community, and that was
Yeah.
community that knew their sheriff and decided to come together and make a very beautiful moment. And
Yeah.
and, and I think that is what we need more of. Yes,
Yeah.
I know it's cliche. Peace and love and happiness. I get it, but there's a reason why that's cliche, right? Like because it
Right.
does feel good and it does work, and you're going to accomplish a hell of a lot more with friendliness and compassion than you are with anger and violence. Because at the end of the day, I think the majority of people, both officers and not, are good people and they want to do the right things. But when you
Hmm.
feel pinned in a corner, when you feel defensive, no matter who you are, you're typically not going to react well from that. But when you feel understood and you feel
Right.
listened to, you typically are more willing to do the same in return.
Hmm.
So I mean I think that is you nailed it on the head, man.
Right.
We need our local people. If you're listening to this, we
Right.
need you to step up in your community, man.
Right.
Take an active role. Step up and fight for those changes that you want.
Right. Yeah, and I know this is an election year, so you get caught up in who's going to be the next president. But look, it doesn't matter whether it's a red side or blue side that wins. That's not going to change your individual community. It doesn't. If
Right.
that were the case, we had 8 years of the other side. That didn't change our community, man. You know what changes your community when you have a mayor like Demings. We have a great mayor
Yeah,
in
man.
in Orange County. He understands it. He
Yeah,
gets it.
very much
You
so.
know, so when you have a mayor like that that's willing to get it and understand it and but yet commands control. He commands power and
Yeah,
control, but he will not let you get away with mess, man. He's not going to. When you have that kind of leadership and understanding, we can get through this. But what did we see? We still saw people try to make a mess in Orlando,
yeah,
even though our local leadership comes from those same neighborhoods and polices those same neighborhoods and has come out of poverty to be the most powerful position, and his wife is in Washington in one of the most powerful positions in Washington. So we just have to understand that we're at a place where people like that can get the highest jobs
yeah,
in our country. However, the more meaningful job is those stakeholders within the community, the business owners in that community. They're important, man.
yeah,
The stakeholders in your community are so very important. They pay the most taxes. They pay the property taxes. They pay for those schools, those fire departments. They pay for the local charities. They're the ones that support your local football. They support your little t-ball leagues. They support your schools. You cannot hurt those local businesses. Those are the driving force of any community.
yeah. And Ellsworth touched on another point. Kind of what we were talking about on Friday on the Couch Live when I was saying community policing type thing. Ellsworth kind of touched on that, and that was a question I actually asked the officer, and
Okay.
his response was multifaceted. What he was saying basically was, a lot of them are very, very understaffed at the moment.
Yeah.
There's a lot of understaffing, so they just don't have some of the people that there's so many fires to put out, but not enough people to do it. Basically, meaning there's not enough people to patrol the streets to handle the crime, while at the same token, doing these events and stuff like that. And I think that's an organizational thing. I think there's ways of being more efficient. I think that's something that they have to address. But the other thing that he said, which I thought was interesting, there's a reason why we couldn't get one to come on the show right now, is because anything that they say could potentially lead to a lot of backlash and things of that nature. And he said one of the things that he doesn't like is being out in public and people come up to him and talking about stuff because he's afraid to say the wrong thing. And so I think that's something we do have to address, right? We have to understand that we can't be our own worst enemy here either. We can't be so outraged all the time about everything. And so if we want them to come in our communities a little bit more, we have to accept them. Because
You
I
have to
don't,
invite them.
yeah, you can invite
Invite
them.
them.
Yeah,
You don't even have to accept them at first. Just invite them
yeah,
and at least be willing to listen
yeah.
and get to know them.
Because,
Because they will come. They will come. If you invite them
yeah,
into your churches and you invite them into your community,
yeah.
circle, they'll come.
Yeah, and he told me there are some programs, right? Like over in I think it was, I don't remember the exact community, but they call it tea with a cop, basically, or coffee with a cop. In the morning times, they have a cop shows up and they answer questions. There's another one where they show up to this Dunkin' Donuts, which I of course made fun of him for. But they show up to a Dunkin' Donuts, and there's like two or three of them. They hang out, they answer questions, and talk to people. A lot of them do show up to like neighborhood watches and things of that nature. So it's not happening. It is. It just needs to happen on a grander scale, and I think that is it is twofold, right? The police agencies need to do a better job of prioritizing that, and at the same token, though, we as a community need to be better at embracing that and facilitating that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's a twofold thing. Like that's the other thing, right? Is we can't just sit back. I know this is unpopular, and I'm not going to go too far into it, but we as a society can't just sit back and point fingers and say, you need to turn, you need to do this.
Right.
We play a role too, and we need to accept that role. We need to understand that, hey, maybe we could be more accepting. Maybe we could take a step back sometimes and look at everything before we start going crazy about stuff. Like, that is, because that was one of the biggest things, because I asked them, one of them, I said, look, what's the biggest thing, if you could say right now, what is it you'd want me to pass along to everybody? And he said two things. He said, number one, education. Education on both sides.
Right.
Citizens need to be more educated on how police work and what's required of them and what's expected of them. He said, and officers need to be more educated on how to actually talk to somebody without creating problems. And then the second thing he said was, everybody take a step back. He just wishes everybody would just take a step back for a little bit, observe a little bit more, and try to have an understanding before you start commenting on things. And I think both of those things are very legit, man. I think it was very well put when he said it to me.
Well, we talk about a lot of the fatigue they go through now because I've done some trainings with law enforcement officers over the overdoses that they have to pick up, our dead kids all the time, because officers have been having to go to, respond to a lot of calls that they weren't initially trained for, and seeing a lot of death of a lot of young people because of overdoses. And so when I go speak to these officers, they're struggling with this already. They're already suffering PTSD from things like this. And so what I'm watching right now on television, I'm just thinking, all right, well, there's some more PTSD issues right now, because a lot of them let's say, I'm only going to speak about the good ones. We can always argue that there's bad ones, but I'm going to speak about, let's say you're a well-intended individual and you're law enforcement. Now you're being asked to put on this stormtrooper uniform. So now you look less personable, right? Because now all they see is the gear, right? All they see is the gear. They see the riot shield. They see all that stuff. And so now you look like a regular stormtrooper. There's no difference between you and the person next to you. And I'm getting yelled at, and I'm getting talked to, and I'm getting spit on. Now I start questioning, why the hell am I even doing this? What am I doing? First, I wanted to be law enforcement because I wanted to serve my community. But all I'm doing is picking up dead bodies from overdoses, and I'm getting spit on and saying that I'm a racist, and I'm not a racist. So how is that officer now going to behave, next month when everybody's back to their own normal little behavior and these millennials are back to Starbucks instead of sitting there cursing in cops' faces? How am I going to feel that day? And so I think we forget that people are human regardless, and if you want a human to respond differently, first you have to understand that they're human, right? Because that's what we're asking them. That's what I wanted. I wanted to be treated like a human when I was a young person, and I thought everything that was happening to me was because I was a Mexican kid. I thought, it's because I'm Mexican, right? And I acted like that. I threw my chest out like that, but I didn't even know that was the case until Dana told me. And I was already with Dana when Dana was telling me, hey, the way you talk to the law enforcement, you kind of asked for some of that. And I was like, no, I didn't, man. And it pissed me off, man, because I really couldn't understand why she was saying that I was being aggressive, because I felt all that onus is on him, not on me. I'm allowed to say what I want to say, how I want to say. As long as I'm not breaking the law, you shouldn't be asking me any questions. But when someone I care about and love was telling me, well, you're kind of like not helping the situation. And I know that's a conversation for another day, but I'm just telling you how my personal growth.
Sure.
How I grew out of a certain situation. And instead of calling everything racist like I did at one point in my life, I began to understand that, well, if I'm acting like an asshole, well then, I'm probably going to get some treatment that I don't want. So I've tried those techniques, and it doesn't always work, but I've learned a lot better. Now my age and all that stuff means something different. So I think that, like you're saying, the more we get education on both sides, instead of just looking at it for your own personal perspective, and that's what makes it very Dharma Time-ish, right? Instead of just viewing it from your perspective and begging the other person to see your perspective, take a step back, turn it around, and ask yourself, let me truly understand what the other side is really saying right now. What is the other side really saying?
Yeah, and I think both sides need to do a better job.
I can educate them, the more I understand of what they're really saying.
Yeah, and there's other things too that we take for granted, right? Like, we watch all these like shows on TV and we just assume that all these cops are that educated or these cops are trained like that, or we go into these therapy sessions with friends or family, or we have HRs and all this other stuff. Dude, I was shocked to find out certain things, and I'm not going to go into all of them, but one in particular stands out. When I was talking to him, it just so happened the day prior he went to a training, and on this training it was talking about juvenile mental health, and he said that he had no clue with some of the things that he learned in that session on how to spot mental health issues in juveniles, right? Because he said the tendency is to always think that, oh, they're just being stupid, or oh, they're just they're upset little kids, but some of them actually have legitimate real problems that need to be addressed. And he had no clue. Because he just wasn't, like, that's not how he was trained. That's not what was brought. Because people got to remember too, man. Like, as we said, that's part of the big Freightliner turning, right? We're trying to now educate a system that used to be do as I say, and now we're expecting them to have more empathy and compassion. Well, that has to be implemented into it, and that takes time. You've got the old guard who doesn't want to let go. Cops hate change. That was his words. Cops hate change. And I think many people hate change. And so some of the old guard are going to be resistant to that. And they've been jaded and they've had so many interactions. And they might not ever change, but they're on their way out. The newer ones coming in are the ones who are bringing in this new energy, this new life. They're the ones bringing in these new experiences, and they're going to be handling things different. And I would hate to think that we're going to jade them too. That's where the education on both sides comes in.
Yeah.
But
And I don't want to create the PTSD in the young children, the young black kids today, and make them think that everybody hates you, because they don't. We don't hate you.
No.
Trinity doesn't hate you. Don't let this messed up cop
Yeah.
and everything that people are saying about this, because they're angry and what they're experiencing, affect the way you look at the world. Because it's unfortunately, it's part of the ugliness in the world, and it does exist in pockets, right? And sometimes you're going to run into it, but usually it's a, because we're in 2020, right? It's a what do you call it? It's an outlier. It's not the norm. It's not the everyday person, man. I promise you that. The other day, Zoe. I mean, it's no secret. Zoe dates a black guy, and Zoe goes. Zoe and Johnny, they hit something in the road, and so they pulled over, and it's the middle of the night, man. It's the middle of the night, right? And this law enforcement officer stayed there with my kid until we got there. And he was very super nice. And I mean, look, that was really cool. Now, she had been pulled over by cops before. They were mean to her and jerky to her, right, for a ticket. But on that particular day, he was a really cool, nice guy. And so I'm glad he was like that, but I had to thank him profusely for being as respectful as he was, because I want him to understand, look, I appreciate the way you took care of my daughter in this situation, because she could have easily been afraid. It's the middle of the night. You could have easily, behaved differently, and you didn't, so thank you very much. And it's those instances like that I hold on to. I like to hold on to those instances and the positives nowadays, because yes, there are the negatives, but I want to hold on to the positives, because those are the moments that I think are teaching moments with my kids, so that they don't walk around, that she doesn't walk around going, oh, cops are this, because last time I got a ticket, blah, blah, blah. And so I want her to remember that cop.
Yeah,
not the cop that gave her the ticket that didn't listen to her, but the cop this time that treated her very nice and respectful.
Yeah, I agree, man. I agree 100%. Yeah. And I think that's the premise of the show, right? Because I think at the end of the day, when we take out some of the emotion and some of the frustrations, we all do agree, man. We really do. I think everybody agrees that putting your knee on somebody's neck and killing them is a shitty thing to do, and it's illegal, and you should be punished. I think everybody agrees that everybody should have a voice, and you should be heard. Hence the protesting. Like, I think everybody agrees that we all have a voice and we should all be heard.
Amen.
I also think everybody agrees that violence and destroying other people's property is not the way to be heard. I think everybody agrees that. I don't know of anybody that thinks that that's the. I don't even think the people who are doing it think it's okay. That's why they're running and covering their masks, because they know it's not okay. So I think we all agree.
You didn't think they were using their masks because they were afraid of COVID-19?
No, not at all. And how convenient, right? But and so I think we all agree on that. And I also think that we all agree that when positive things do happen, like the story you said about your daughter, that's a great thing, and that should be rewarded. I think we all agree on that too.
Yeah.
And so I think that we need to spend more time focusing on the things that we do agree with, and the progress that has been being made. And I think that's going to go a much further away in turning this freighter around.
Yeah.
Because
And dysfunctional parents that we have, the Republican, Democrat mom, and a Republican dad. You guys are dysfunctional, and so when you have a dysfunctional parent group, you're going to have dysfunctional children a lot of times. Okay, so stop being so damn dysfunctional and work together for real. Stop using us as little political pawns. Don't tell me because I'm Latino I got to think a certain way or I gotta vote a certain way. That's bullshit, man. I don't like that. I don't like you using my race or my culture or using anybody's race or culture just because you view things that way and you view one party voting that way. Don't tell me I got to vote a certain way to keep your agenda. And I think that's an issue that's kind of made this a little uglier than what it
yeah,
needed to be as well. I think our media needs to be a little bit more responsible in how they cover these issues because we do all agree. We all agree. Stop making it look like one side does not agree with this. They all agree with
I
it.
gotta say, my buddy Clarence, man. First of all, love you, man. Hope you're doing well. Secondly, Clarence, man, way to come through. He just put a comment up, and I'm gonna read it. It says, "It's just ignorant people amongst all races. The way to protest is at the voting polls." One hundred
Amen to
percent.
that.
You just nailed it right
Yeah.
there, man. That's how you
But
vote.
don't vote by color because then you're part of the problem.
Yeah, don't.
If you vote a certain way just because your color, because supposedly someone tells you got to vote a certain way because your color or culture, you're part of the problem.
Correct.
Vote for the best candidate
Absolutely.
that's going to be the best for you, our
Absolutely.
country.
And on that note, you kind of touched on it. This is more of a personal plea to everybody. Please stop letting the media control how you think. Please stop watching clips on certain things and having that form your whole opinion, right? And what I mean by that is even me, right? Like I feel sometimes like I almost have to defend myself if I watch too much TV, right? If I watch too much TV, I start to think like, man, when I go out in public, I need to like, wear like a T-shirt that says like, "Hey, I love you." You know what I mean? And anybody who knows me knows that that's the furthest thing from my truth. But if you watch media enough, you start to think that there's like race wars in the streets, and it's not even safe to leave your house.
Oh yeah,
And that's complete and
they
utter,
want you to think.
and that's to complete and utter bullshit, right? When I go outside, I look around, and you know what? We're all just people, bro. We're all just trying to get through our day, man. Like I went to the store earlier after we left Subaru, and I walked in. You know what? There was white people, there's black people, there's men, there was women, and you know what we were all doing? Just trying to figure out these stupid little arrows on the ground, and trying to get our
Absolutely,
food. That's it. That's all we were
that's
doing.
the norm,
Nobody
and
gives
that's
a
the norm.
shit. Nobody's fighting nobody. There was no race war in the street. So like, don't let the media portray this and get us all hyped up when it's unnecessary, man. Like, don't look at the media. Look at your eyes. Walk out and see. Do you see people in the streets whooping each other's ass? No, that's just not
Yep.
happening. And so don't let them hype us up because there's an election. Don't let those control things like that. That would be my personal plea. Because
Amen to
it is
that.
so easy to get caught up if you're watching a show and they're showing these things and they make, like I said, I feel like sometimes I have one of my best friends on this planet that I've known for over 20 years, my buddy Terrence, man. I feel like I need to call him up and be like, "Hey bro, I like black people, right?" Like watching the show, it makes you feel like that. And so it's like, if I'm feeling that way, I'm sure other people are as well. So I think we just need to take a step back and
Right.
realize, like, wait a minute, man, media's job is not to be your friend, right? Media's job is to get people to watch. That's
Yeah.
it. It's not even to get the news
Uh,
out anymore. Those days are gone. Their job now is to get viewership. And so,
sell soap and elect their
exactly.
candidate.
And so to get viewership, they need to create drama. Nobody likes to watch paint dry, but we will like to watch people beat each other up in the streets, though. And so they're going to put that out there. And so we got to be mindful of that, man. Don't let this train get started that we're not in control of. And I'm not buying into the fake news and stuff. That's a whole other discussion. I'm just strictly saying don't let them dictate your mindset. Don't
Right.
let them override what your eyes are telling you are true.
And more importantly, Trinity, is your local elections are more important than the national. The
Yeah.
local elections are the ones that are the real change.
Yeah, man.
So whatever whatever side you're on, or whatever the local people say, those are the people that command the most change in your area, not the federal government. Not the federal government. It's your local commissioner. They're the ones that decide. Have you ever driven down a road and just wondered, man, why can't I do a U-turn here? Or why do I have to take a left here? And all these stupid little decisions that we all have to make in our little community.
Yeah.
No president did that. That's some local ridiculous person that says, nope, you have to go 3 blocks down to do a U-turn because we decided to let them put a gas station right there, but we didn't give them an alternative on how to create traffic. So we're going to make you go 3 blocks down, then you can do a U-turn, then you have to come back. That's a local person.
Yep.
And that's just a little incident. So if they can't even figure out how to get me into a gas station, then
Yep.
I'm voting them out. It's the local people that decide the local culture of the place.
We only got a few minutes left, man. You got any final words you want to put out there?
That's what it is. I just it's not about. I mean, because we've had all colors of presidents, right? And when I say that, I mean blues and reds. We've had both, and it still hasn't. My life is not dictated by them. My life is dictated, however, and I have noticed different changes by like governor on down.
Yep.
Like there's some serious changes that happens with that. We saw it with this COVID-19. Yep. The governor is the one that decided, are we shutting down or are we not shutting down? Are we doing this? Can I go to the beach? Can I not go to the beach? Local government dictates everything. Yep. Go to the voting polls, vote who you think is the best for you. And if the sheriff, and if you don't like the way your sheriff is representing your community, and you don't feel like the local law enforcement is coming into your community, getting to know who you are, then that's how you vote that sheriff out, bring in another one. That's how it's done.
Yeah, and educate yourself, man. As like you said on Friday's show, there's so many of these local things that sometimes we don't know. We just see names and we just either bubble in something or do some research, man. Right. Look at who your local people are. Look at what their positions on things are. Yeah. That's how change is created. Change is not created by throwing a rock in a window.
No. And if you think, if Biden is in office, all of a sudden all black people are going to be able to not get killed by cops. That's just the dumbest thing in the world. And if you think cops just started getting killed 3 years ago when Trump went in office, that's a dumb thing in the world. It's not about them. This is about institutional changes that we have to make at a very local level. And I think your local sheriff is where you need to start.
Yep, pretty much. All right, so let me give some final thoughts here, man. Unless you got anything else you want to add real quick. We are running out of time.
I'm good, bro. Right.
I'm going to make this relatively short and sweet. I just want everybody to kind of just focus on what we agree on. There's so much more that we agree on. Even some of these people that you're getting involved in these Twitter wars or Facebook wars and stuff, they might have used one word that you didn't like or posted something. At the end of the day, man, we all really kind of do agree on the important stuff. We all agree that what this cop did was ridiculous and needs to be punished for it. We all agree that police brutality has to stop. We all agree that burning down your neighbor's house is not a good thing. And we all agree that institutional change needs to take place. I don't know of anybody that disagrees with those things. And so I think that's what we need to focus on, and that's what we need to build on. But we always got to remember to come from a place of love and compassion. That has to be our intent. Our intent has to be a place of love, a place of compassion, both for ourselves and everybody else. And sometimes that's easier than others. I get it, but it doesn't change that that's what needs to be done. So I think that's all I got. I think Louie and I were going to stick around for a few minutes here on Facebook Live after the show. So feel free to stick around. If you guys got any questions or comments, by all means, I'd love to hear them. For everybody else watching on YouTube, make sure you please hit the subscribe button. It does help us, believe it or not. Share it with your friends, subscribe, all those types of things. But in the meantime, I think that's all we got. So now that you know better, do better. Peace. Are you still here? What are you doing? I told you, go do better.